Okay. Good evening, everyone. This is Victoria from Women's Issues, Women's Voices. And I am so excited to bring a person and a topic that is pretty dear to me into my Zoom studio this evening to be sharing it with you. Tonight in the studio, we have Kris Tenny-Brittian. And Kris is the creatrix of it's not just a website, but it's a whole, it's like a way of being for ladies of a certain age and women in general.
Yes.
So, Kris, like, some people will be will be tuning in and they won't have any idea, right, what this topic is about. LOACA Life.
LOACA Life, yes.
Some folks may have seen it on Facebook and been like, oh, I'm interested in that topic. But just let's start out in general. Who are you? Who are you? So you told me that first, like, that you have these 3 words that are your mission statement.
They're my mission statement. Yeah, I did some mission statement work a few years ago. And as the pieces came together, I realized I live, my purpose in life is to empower, or is to equip. Let's start with equip, is to equip and then empower and encourage people. And Victoria has heard me say this before. I went through all of that, what you want to be, what you should be, what every girl wants to be. And where I lived, it was a cheerleader. You wanted to be popular, and I just didn't fit the cheerleader mold by any stretch of the imagination. So now I get to be a cheerleader, that encourager. I was just working with some people the other day, and they were saying, wow, I can see you doing this, and that. And so, I really think my call into that particular place is just to be there to encourage. There is the other pieces, but the part that's down underneath it wasn't mine to equip. Yeah, in a way, it's mine to empower, because I wasn't going to step in there and do anything for them. It's that encouragement that allows to empower. So yeah, equip, empower, encourage.
Equip, empower, encourage. Yeah. Yeah. And that's very exciting. And then the question I have is, so what are the ways that you do this? What are the roles that you play, or the things that you manifest, right, that then help you bring that to other people?
Sure. Yeah. At the very base of how that manifests is as an Amma, a spiritual mama.
I love it.
Years and years ago, I facilitated retreats for young women and men, mostly women though, were in my cohorts that I facilitated. And we would go spend time in silence and do 3 days in silence and come back together and share what was going on in that silence time and what was coming out. And so, except for doing, half hour or 45-minute blocks with them, to do just some reflecting with them during their silence, they could sign up for some time together. Except for that, I was able to spend time in silence and reflecting. And as the pieces came together, I knew that, if you could do anything regardless of time and money, or what do you want to be when you grow up, I that's where I could say, I just want to be an Amma. I want to sit and listen and talk, equip, empower, encourage.
Right.
Yeah, I'm still trying to find, I don't know, a wealthy benefactor, or figure out a way that I can just sit around to equip, empower, encourage, and be this Amma, this spiritual mama.
But it sounds like, you told me about these other things that you do, like that are words that, nouns that people would recognize: entrepreneur, author, you do spiritual coaching, let's see, what did a consultant, you do consulting work, right?
Yeah.
So those are always that you bring this spiritual mission of equipping, empowering, encouraging to the world.
Yes. And let me say with that I have found watching people, but also people I've worked with over so many years, that when their job changes or something happens, their lives are changing. We see it in retirement. All of a sudden, all that identity is gone. And where our confusion can come is that this is who I am, not this is what I do. Right? So I am an entrepreneur. I'm entrepreneurial. That's a part of what I am. And I can't help but create. Just ideas come and it sticks. And I try to know what's mine, right? But what's mine to give away. And people, when you're around me for any amount of time, and I do this with clients, they may say something and something may come, but then it's theirs to do what they do with it. It's not mine. Although something of mine comes out of all of that. But so I am entrepreneurial, but I'm an entrepreneur. I'm a spiritual counselor and coach. That's part of being the Amma. So those are manifestations. But I'm a consultant. That's what I'm doing in this stage of my life. I'm an author. I hope to always be writing, but I realize that may not, for one reason or another, be possible. But that's not going to change. Maybe the way to say that is that's a mode or a modality, right? A system of delivering what I offer. But
because you've even talked about, I mean, some of the jobs, and I'm doing air quotes on the radio, sorry folks, but these things that on one hand you could look at as just being a way to make money,
right?
About substitute teaching, elving,
Yes.
And everyone should know that you have been head elf for Santa Claus for some time now, which just fits you so well. And yet, like, one of the things that I really, I mean, from the first time I met you, I just you have such a curious, creative, like, you're just like surprised and interested, even if it's a job. Like, that's one of the things that I think that's when when we started talking about this interview and you start talking about these other pieces, like, oh, that's what you're bringing to everything you do. Even if the thing that you're doing might be very functional. It's very functional work. But you just bring this expressivity to it. That's a little lob-on term I'm using in there, the functional expressivity, right?
That word.
Right. So how we first met was in a Sunday service at the Heart, Body, and Soul.
In Columbia, Missouri.
Yeah. And this is where, why I'm excited to be doing this interview is because I'm a little bit in the story of the LOACA Life creation that is one of your newest vehicles, manifestations, right, modes of helping equip, empower, and encourage women of a certain age.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. So for our viewers, our listeners who have heard this story, and when I tell the story of LOACA, the genesis of LOACA, I always have to do that with Victoria's name. I mean, you were just there, and so it began in one of these Sunday services, and these services at Heart, Body, and Soul start with an introduction of ourselves with a gratitude. And Victoria, whom I did not know at all,
We had not met.
we'd been in doing those for very long. So we
Mm-mm.
went around, and Victoria said, I'm Victoria Day, but all I heard was Victoria. And she said that she was sharing gratitude for menopause. And I only found out, about a month ago, you asked me, do you know the rest of what I said? Because all I heard was menopause. And
I just imagine you hearing menopause.
I think that would be it,
Right?
because my brain immediately says, did she say menopause? We don't say that word outside. Because there are men here. Does she have men there?
Yeah, I hadn't gotten that rule somewhere. Like, I don't know how. I'm very fortunate, I guess.
You are very
Right?
fortunate.
Yeah.
And it's right of me and all of these, these norms, these social norms that I have been working for so many years to, I don't want to sound, I don't want to sound like, oh, I'm out there breaking all these social norms, but I have this awareness of what has shaped me. And there are some of those pieces by which I don't want to hold on to, or that I have found to be limiting, right? That I not necessarily want to break free from, but just be free from, so I can be who I am. So,
well, choice.
Exactly, choice.
Right?
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, and so listeners, just know, like, you can feel comfortable with menopause, and you do not have to go out saying it out loud, right? That is not the expectation. Because it's about choice. On the other hand, if you are experiencing menopause and that word is attached to, right, like shame or keeping it quiet or any of those things, then we invite you to keep listening.
When you say that, it makes me think in another manifestation, I had responsibility for over 90 churches in Northeast Missouri. And we ran this incredible camp program, and we did what we called we called it sex camp, but that wasn't what we were,
That's not how you advertised it.
Yeah. And so these were kiddos, I want to say they were going into sixth, maybe seventh grade, but probably sixth grade. And they spent a week, boys and girls, and they did pieces about learning about their bodies and sexuality and, all of these.
Wonderful.
That we don't talk about, right? And doing that from a Christian standpoint, we put that in there, but we brought all kinds of points of view within, from the very, a very conservative to a very liberal and progressive, trying to let them know the different pieces so that eventually they'll have options from which to choose. But they're going to be different choices, right? So anyways, we put that out there, and they would talk about the kids would stand outside of the lunch hall or the cafeteria dining hall, and so they'd have to go penis, and you'd have to, or vagina to get in there. And I think the girls called the girl parts and the boys part, and then they switched them over. And isn't that what menopause is like? No, you don't have to stand up and scream menopause, but you do have to be able to say the word, even if it's with a list or with its fear and trepidation. But it's just part of what we do, like giving birth, right?
Well, the blog post that I wrote that will be on the website, that news flash, right? That menopause is not a disorder. It's a part of the process, right? I mean, to demonize the flower for losing its petals and setting on the seed pods, that makes it just as much sense. And I don't know people who do that, but I mean, there are, but right, that every step of the process has a purpose and has value, right? So I left. I just, so you know, I mean, I said my gratitude, and would you like me to share the rest of the gratitude?
The rest that
So the gratitude was that I have a male partner who understands and appreciates that I am a woman, and that I was going through perimenopause, that I menopausal, and that he understood that we were changing sexually, and that totally on the journey with me. And so, I'm just, if any of you know my partner, like, kudos to him. Yeah. And then, of course, so then I went on my way, not realizing I'd rocked anyone's world, right? Because I was just saying my own thing. And then I showed up like a month later, and you did a different sermon.
Yeah, I was actually
Yeah.
teaching that month. So I teach or that particular week, because I would teach once a month. And yes, and so I didn't know. All I remembered was it was this woman named Victoria, I thought, and I knew where she was sitting. I couldn't tell you where she was sitting. And
good spatial awareness.
It's so weird, because I have a spatial disability of all things, and I don't tend to be visual. I sense, right? I work from an intuitive place, and so that I remembered where you really made an impression.
Yeah.
Pull up that message, because I don't remember exactly what it was, but I think it was about speaking, if not speaking truth, but being able to speak up and to say what we don't, what people don't tend to talk about or to say. And but I did say, I said, a couple 3 weeks ago, there was a woman here, and all I remember is that her name was Victoria. She was sitting in that seat over there, which you were not in your assigned seat that day.
I was on the opposite side of the room, in fact. Yeah.
I remember too, where you were that day.
Yeah.
And she said something about menopause.
Yeah. Yes. And then you talked about, like, these words that we don't talk about, and that we sort of shame and, diminish and invalidate. Yeah.
And then you came up after the service to say, I'm Victoria Day. And I'm sure I apologized, which is an aside. You talked about doing an article and apologies, and I'm sorry. Please do that, in the next few months. I was just with a young woman in the last week who was apologizing, and all I could think of was Victoria Day sitting on the other. And so anyways.
That's one of my next articles. So then out of this all brewed and brewed and brewed and brewed.
Months and months. Over 2 years or so.
Because I think on that day, I said something, or maybe it was even just, we met in the store then, a little bit later, something about being women of a certain age.
Yes.
Right? That's,
yes.
Yeah.
And so before that, I want to go back to that second Sunday, if we can, to say that afterwards we were talking about, where do you talk about things like menopause? And you mentioned Crohn's gatherings and the like. Yes. And a friend had mentioned something along those lines several years before, but I just don't like this word Crohn, and it's just like, okay, of course I have this visualization, and it's
Hecate.
Yes. Well, thank you. Yes, indeed.
I mean, Crohn is this, like, shriveled up, the kyphosis, right? Right. Yeah.
And
no
imagery that goes
nope.
With that, and if that's the way our bodies become, that's okay. But we think that's there. When my husband was getting ready to turn 50, he's 3 years older than I am, and so he kept saying about my getting old, and I guess my birthday was coming up, and I'm going, wait a second, you are projecting onto me. I'm not getting old. And so then I became 50 and 55, and this year I became 60, and all the more reason with LOACA, this isn't about getting old, it's about aging. And so that Crohn piece carries just some imagery about being old. But okay, that's a whole little aside there to bring that back. So that was conversation, and you then with your body work, what you bring in, and the classes you were doing and whatnot, and so you were there. It was one of your classes, and I think you were going into one of your classes, and you were talking about, you know, the movement and the aging body and whatnot, and that you were working on a particular kind of class, and I said something about, well, yep, that sounds good, and particularly for aging, but I don't really do that kind of stuff. And then I thought, oh my gosh, I should be, because we're talking about connecting with our bodies. Wouldn't it be nice to be connected to my body for one of the few times in my life? And then it was you were saying something, and we were talking about aging, and I'm sure it was you who said something about, yeah, it's like women of a certain age, and it was, yeah, women of a certain age, exactly, women of a certain age. Well, how old is that? I don't know. We don't have to know what that is. So I left that day, and I came home, and I called my husband, who until COVID lived in Kansas City almost all the time. And I said, which for those of our listeners who don't know, Kansas City is halfway across the state. It's about, it's over 100 miles from here to the apartment there. Anyways, I said to him, I need a website, because he's set up my websites in the past. I need a website. He's like, what do you need a website for now? I said, I need a website because I need something for women of a certain age. And as I got to listening to that, it was WOCA. No, not WOCA. Then it was LOACA, certain age, because isn't this true? A lot of, as we're, and I'm putting this into menopause at this point. I mean, this whole thing came out of conversation about aging, particularly around menopause and that change in our lives. And so as I'm thinking through that, a lot of us think we're crazy stuff. It's not just what's happening to our bodies, it's what we're manifesting, right? Oh my gosh. And so we don't want anybody to see, you know, what is happening? I have to go to the bathroom, you know, all of those pieces that go in there. So we think we're crazy, loca, and we're afraid other people would think we're crazy. And quite honestly, our partners often think that we're crazy because you know, of stuff that's going on there. So that whole sense of craziness came in there, but I didn't want it to be crazy. So to add that A in there, and my husband said, you know, nobody's going to know how to spell it and find it on the website, as you were finding earlier, right? That it's at LOACA. And I said, just keep saying ladies of a certain age, ladies of a certain age. .life. It's local life, you know.
Local life.
Live this life in its fullness, in its entirety, the irrational parts and the rational the parts. Like, what the heck is that? Right? The rationality and our irrationality. Yeah, there it is.
What a great place for us to wrap up this first half, right? So if you have just tuned in, this is Victoria from Women's Issues, Women's Voices, and I am talking with Kris Tenny-Brittian, and we are talking about LOACA Life, ladies of a certain age. If you want to understand more about that, stay tuned. We're going to have a little music, a little break, and then we're going to come back and we're going to talk about what is a LOACA life.